Less than 7% of medical students were taught minimal about menopause and zero about perimenopause. Not only that, 25 billion dollars a year in medical costs can be attributed to menopause. That, my friends, is absolutely terrible, considering perimenopause can be 10 plus years of our lives, over a decade for some women. Even if it's 5 to 10 years, this is a lot of time spent in this transitional period between perimenopause and menopause, where a lot of these medical issues arise or begin to arise. And then it amplifies the older we get and the farther into postmenopause we get. So, why is it that our medical system has not caught up? Why are they not being taught how to use hormone replacement therapy? I don't know. It's it's a sad, sad thing that in 2024, this is the case. I do know that if doctors want to learn about how to use bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, they have to typically pay out of pocket to do the training in bioidentical hormones. And of course, they typically don't want to. They don't want to pay. It's like they're seeing patients for a matter of minutes. What are they really going to want to pay to go learn some extra information around, or any information around perimenopause or menopause and how to treat it properly? Obviously not. So these Q&As on my podcast, I feel are really important because you ladies need this information. You have questions in regards to your health, to your hormones. What can you do? And you're just unable to find it in very many places, except for podcasts, Google Doctor, and some great books. They're out there. But in general, I understand that the information is very challenging to get. So if you have questions for our next Q&A, I will link to our Google Doc form to submit those questions. You can also leave a voice message on my SpeakPipe channel. And you guys can do this anytime, even if there's not a Q&A coming up. I always check them. And, if it's a question that I could make an entire episode around, I certainly will, because I know that if you've got a question, usually there are thousands of other women with the same question that needs to be answered. So let's dive into your questions that were submitted for today's Q&A. So number one, we have Carrie. Great question, Carrie. All about testosterone. I want to know optimal female levels, not just lab range. I want more info on levels that are needed from endogenous versus exogenous sources. Talk about frequency of injection. My doc says once a month because of the dosing being for men. Intramuscular or sub-Q. Does topical testosterone really raise DHT levels higher? And how? Is that a bad thing? Testosterone seems to be the one, she put one gate kept. One gate, I'm guessing she's saying mean like one gate closed on the hormone stuff, where many won't share where they like their levels. So not sure what that sentence was there, but I get it. I get what you're asking. And really, I could do a whole podcast episode answering this question. So I will be short and sweet though with it. Uh, yes. Okay. Total testosterone. Just so you guys know, LabCorp range for female total testosterone is between 4 and 50 nanograms per deciliter. 4 and 50. So, if you're at 4, you're fine. If you're at 50, you're fine. Terrible range. Okay. So ideally, functional range where we want to see women, where we see that they feel good with their testosterone levels. This is without hormone replacement therapy. 25 to, I would say, 40. Some women feel good even on the higher end between 40 and 50. When we do see levels that are up in that close to 50 or above, we typically, that's showing a bit of a picture of polycystic ovarian syndrome, especially if it's over that 50. So that's quite high levels of testosterone. If they also have high levels of dihydrotestosterone and high levels of insulin, then that is kind of like the PCOS picture. And typically it means you're on the spectrum of that. So ideally, yeah, we want to see between 25 and 40. That's where I see where women are like, yeah, I feel good. Like no symptoms of testosterone deficiency. Some practitioners will even go to 30, 35, but I've seen many women around that 25 range that feel good and that they don't feel they need replacement. Free testosterone, LabCorp range. I just have to mention these because it just makes me shake my head. LabCorp range is 0, so no free testosterone at all for your body to use, or up to 4 is fine, or 4. I think they actually put 4.2, which, yeah, 4.2. Which, yeah, okay, give us the 0.2. I don't know. But 0 to 4.2 is the LabCorp range for free. Ideally, without HRT, between 2 and 4 seems to be good for most women. On HRT, so this gets a little different. Total testosterone, when you're on testosterone replacement therapy, especially injectable, will overshow in blood work. So every hormone has its like quirks with testing. And there's I haven't been able to find the rhyme or reason behind some of this. Like progesterone, for instance, if you're using it topically, won't show up in blood work because it tends to sit in the tissues, which blood work isn't testing the tissues. It overshows in saliva, undershows topical in metabolites. Oral shows in metabolites, does show, but not great in serum, doesn't show, it does show in saliva, but will overshow as well. Like it just, it's very frustrating. But testosterone injectable will overshow on total levels in blood work. It seems to be fine with metabolite testing, saliva testing. I haven't done a lot of saliva testing on women that are on HRT testosterone. We primarily use urine metabolite testing and blood in our clinic. So I'll go with that. And usually we'll see women that are on injectable testosterone, their levels a lot of the time are over 100 nanograms per deciliter. So we really want to go by free levels of testosterone. It's more accurate, we see. So free levels of test. So basically total testosterone, you're going to go over, don't freak out. Typically is fine. If you're like way over 200, then that's going to show that's definitely an excess. Is the odd woman that we have come across. There are the odd women that we come across that show 200-ish range, and their free testosterone's in range and they're still okay. But typically you're looking at over 100, and that tends to be all right as long as that free testosterone isn't over range as well. Free levels, you want to be in the upper range of the free levels. So typically around 3 or 4, but that also depends on the woman herself and how high her dihydrotestosterone goes. So every woman has a different rate of how much she converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. And dihydrotestosterone is the more masculine of the testosterone of the androgens. And so she was asking, like, well, why is this a bad thing? Don't we want DHT? We do to some degree. And DHT is really great for putting muscle on, leaning the system out, great for libido, really great for libido. And unfortunately, it comes with a whole host of bad side effects. And so that's where we'll see women getting hair loss on their head, hair growth on their face, clitoral enlargement, greasy skin, acne, because that dihydrotestosterone is stronger. And so you're going to get more androgenic side effects from it. And so women will tend to feel good as their DHT starts to go up and their testosterone starts to go up, and they're like, wow, this feels so good. It's really strong feeling. It kind of makes you feel like Superwoman, where you're like, yeah, this feels really good. Is this what a guy feels like? Your libido's great. You got more energy. And then suddenly you're growing a little beard and you're going bald. And so that's not so much fun. And so it's a too bad of a thing because we feel really good and we like that feeling that it gives us, but it typically comes with these negative side effects that no woman wants. And so we do tell women, like, yes, you feel good, but that's probably too much. So let's, shrink that dose down a little bit. And that's when working with a practitioner is so important, so that you know where your levels need to be and you're testing and you're able to see, okay, look at the DHT. It went up really fast. So obviously you're a high converter. And so you're going to be somebody that maybe needs to have a little bit lower on the testosterone because of that conversion rate. And so some women need to be around that 2-3 mark rather than the 3-4 mark for free testosterone. So it is nuanced. Every individual is going to be different, but there's some general, things to ranges to aim for. Is you want to be in that upper range area with your free testosterone and not go by the total testosterone so much. Good to check, because like I said, if it goes really high, then that's typically, yeah, you're taking in too much for your body. And then the doctor's saying once a month. So he's saying that because it's the dose for men, so he's giving you a male dose, and it comes usually as a testosterone cypionate, which has about a 10-day half-life in the body. And so that means that you inject yourself and you'll get it for about 10 days. And so essentially, it sounds like this doctor is giving you a male dose, which is anywhere between usually 100 to 200 milligrams a week, but giving that to you for a month. That makes no sense whatsoever. That is not how we produce testosterone. And you can get testosterone in female dosage, obviously, you just can't get like an androgel for women that's in a very specific dose. No, that's for men. So, but you can compound testosterone cypionate for women in much smaller doses. You can do 5 milligrams a week, you can do 2 milligrams a week, 10 milligrams a week, compared to a male dose of 100, 200, some even do 300 a week. So, number one, weekly dose is typically best. That's then you're working with the half life of that testosterone. And some women do better on splitting that actually into two doses a week. So, once again, nuanced individual approaches because different genetic SNPs make it so that we can break down testosterone at different different pace in the body. So some women will rapidly go through it while others will slowly metabolize their testosterone. If you're quickly running through it, then you may want to dose it twice. If your body has trouble metabolizing it, you may want to do smaller doses broken up. And so we always kind of go with what's easiest first, which is of course once a week injectable. We do prefer sub-Q now over intramuscular, but some women love their intramuscular, but it's great. It works awesome. Sub-Q is just that little bit slower of a release than intramuscular, smaller needle, easier to inject for some women. They don't like the bigger needle into the muscle. So once again, personal preference and what's working best for you. But we definitely see that every 7 to 10 days injection works best, and finding the dose that your body needs, basically, where that you feel great, you're optimized, your levels get up to that 3 or 4, maybe as the free testosterone, no androgenic side effects. Awesome. And we've got it. And then, is that all your questions answered? Yes, I think it is. All right. Now let's hear from one of our audios that was sent in, which is, oh, she wanted to stay anonymous. It's actually an interesting question, but not to do with hormones, but we'll put it in here.
Hi, Karen. My question is, you talked about red light therapy and this panel that was able to create vitamin D, and you talked about that it was your friend Molly Eastman that told you about this, and I was just wondering where we can get this panel, even though if it's expensive. I'm interested in the panel for infrared therapy and helping our body create vitamin D. Thank you so much. I love your podcast.
Okay, so I wanted to put that in because that little device that she's talking about is something that I've been using consistently now for several weeks. And I love it. There is nothing like this on the market. And so it's extremely unique that it is a red light therapy box. So there's a setting where it's just pure red light. And then there's a setting where you actually are getting UVB rays and full spectrum light. And so it has many different settings depending on your skin type. And you have to be very careful because you can burn, which I did already. I burnt my skin because I put it on the wrong setting. And it was a little bit too high for me. And lo and behold, I was like halfway through the day, I'm like, oh, why is my face so sore? And I couldn't quite figure it out. And I'm looking at myself in a video and I'm like, why is my face red on that one side? Well, I had the box sitting on my desk on the side. I thought it was at a lower setting and it actually sunburned my skin. So it doesn't have UVA in it, which is damaging to your skin. So it's got UVB, which can sunburn your skin, but doesn't have that if you're not burning yourself, it's not going to damage the skin. And actually, it's going to help your body to produce vitamin D, which there's no light box like that on the market. And so this gives you many different things all in one. So you're going to get that seasonal affective disorder light therapy. It's going to give you a little dose of vitamin D. It's going to tan your skin a little tiny bit. Unless you're not careful, then you're going to sunburn your skin. Uh, and then it has the healing side where you can just put it on red light therapy and use it throughout the day for the benefits of red light, which are huge. I'm actually having somebody come on to talk about the benefits of red light and what it can do for your mitochondria and energy and detoxification and inflammation and all of these amazing benefits that you can get from red light therapy. So all in one, this is called Mitolux. I am going to link to it in the show notes with my link and my coupon code for it. And then that way you, for anybody else that's interested, that's where you can find it. So thank you for asking about it because it's been a highlight for me for the last few weeks now that the winter is very quickly approaching here. And I don't do well in winter time. I've always used one of those blue light boxes, but according to my circadian health friends, Danielle Hamilton and Molly Eastman, those are no good because they're only giving you that blue light, which we already have so much blue light in our environment that we need some of that UVB in there to help balance it out. So it's better to have more of a full spectrum light. And of course, because this gives you vitamin D as well, it can be really good for people that suffer with seasonal affective disorder like myself. Okay. Anonymous again. How do you navigate sleep and possible mood changes while taking GLP-1 peptides aside from sleep hygiene, exercise, sunshine, and thyroid replacement, especially if there is a hesitation to begin HRT due to possible weight gain? So she's worried that if she starts HRT, she may gain weight, which I've done an episode about why this happens. And it is something that happens, but the opposite happens as well to many women where it really helps them with weight loss. And they actually showed in a really good study that women in menopause on GLP-1s lost up to 30% more weight if they were also taking hormone replacement therapy in conjunction with the GLP-1 peptides. 30% more. So that's showing that, you're giving your body those tools to help release the weight when you're taking the peptides. And we've definitely seen this in our groups as well with hundreds of women. When women stall out and don't do well with the weight loss on the peptides, it's almost always because they are not optimizing their hormone levels. So I would maybe consider changing your mind on the HRT, and you being on the GLP-1s will also help your body not to gain weight from HRT if it was going to. It'll counterbalance. So you have to think about that as well. Because with mood, if you're feeling mood changes, of course, HRT can be really great for mood changes in perimenopause and menopause. The oral progesterone really can help with sleep. Women they love it. It's so good. I've been taking oral progesterone for the last 2 nights. I usually do cream, but the last few nights I've had so much trouble sleeping. My stress has been really high this past week. And so I take oral for a couple of days and then it starts to bother me. But I tell you what, the sleep I've had, like I track my sleep on my ultra human ring. My deep sleep went up, my HRV went up, my REM went like almost doubled my REM sleep. I'm like, oh, this is so good. Like I wish I could take oral progesterone all the time, but I can't. I start to get badly affected from it. So I have to kind of mix it with my transdermal progesterone. But anyways, just something to consider. Besides that, my go-to sleep supplement, and I have tried every supplement under the sun, is Sleep Breakthrough by BioOptimizers. So I will link to that one in the show notes as well with my coupon code for it. It works really, really well. I'll take that in conjunction with their magnesium, and it is my whole family, my kids, my husband, everybody loves the Sleep Breakthrough. If any of them have trouble sleeping, that's our go-to every time. The other thing that I'll use periodically myself is a liquid THC that is a strain of marijuana that specifically is for sleep, which is indica. I do believe this person's in Canada, if I remember. No, I can't remember if she's in Canada. She might be. But that, yeah, I think she is. She's in Canada. So legal, THC is legal across Canada. So it's something you could consider, or a CBD combo with CBN works really well for some people, or there's different strains of CBD that work well. Always, go into the shops that sell it, and they're typically extremely knowledgeable about which ones work and which ones don't for sleep, because there's some that are going to high wire you, and then there's ones that help induce sleep. And I literally take drops, and that's all I have to take. Anything past that, I get stoned and I hate it. So personally, that's what I do. So you can explore some of those options to help with sleep. All right, let's hear from another speak pipe.
Hello, doctor. This is Miss Jackie Brown here in Louisiana, 57 years old. I've been listening to your broadcast and other great doctors like Dr. David Rosensweet, Dr. Louise Nissan, Dr. Felice Gers, and been working with my gynecologist here in Louisiana for a couple of years now, and finally taking estrogen, progesterone, and I just started on testosterone. My question is, do I cyclic or not? I have heard Dr. Gertz mention the importance of cyclic because it goes with the rhythm of the body. And then Dr. Rosensweet didn't really mention it. I want to know what your viewpoint is. Do I need to go ahead and do the cyclic, which I take progesterone 2 weeks and then off 2 weeks? Want to know your suggestion on that. It's the hormones are something very interesting. I've learned through the years. It's taken a couple of years. When I first started in my late 40s, there really wasn't anything around here, and has spent a lot of money finally doing other research through the years. I'm taking all three, but I've gained a little bit of weight, but I'm still working on that. I've always exercised, so that's helped. I've been through a lot of stresses, and finally.
Okay, so that cut her off. You're only allowed a minute 30. So uh, I apologize for the cutoff, but probably a good thing, or I think people would probably just carry on and on and on, which is something I would do. Uh, you just sound so sweet, whoever you are. You sound very, very sweet. Thank you for sending your question and it's actually we've got a few people that have asked about cycling hormones. And I will first say, in our group coaching program on track, we have a master class coming up in November for that's all about uh, the cycling of hormones. And so we've got two experts coming in that are going to give us a master class all about cycling your hormones and why you would maybe want to do this. And you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. So that's really exciting. So if you are keen on learning more and you'd like to be part of that, it would be worth joining the program for. And we also, inside the On Track program, we also have a protocol for cycling your hormones through that I I learned through Dr. Felice Gersh. So I took her course in cycling your hormones. And so I have given access to our members of that for that um, protocol. Because it's not just, I think a lot of people, when they hear about this, they think and they assume that we're just talking about cycling progesterone 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And that's what that means. And there's more to it. There's that, which, yes, if that's all you can do, we definitely lean on that side in our clinic to have women cycle their progesterone, because naturally we cycled our progesterone our whole fertile lives, where, days 14 to 28 is when we have the bulk of our progesterone. And there's a lot of reasoning behind that inside the body. It upregulates the estrogen receptors. Estrogen upregulates the progesterone receptors. It upregulates tumor suppressing genes. And so there's purpose behind it. And women do tend to feel really good when they start cycling their progesterone. There's some women that feel very dependent on progesterone for sleep, for instance, where they're like, I can't go without it. In which case, we tend to then, okay, well, let's look at what else could be going on. Some women, they need to get their estrogen a little bit higher for sleep. And they can tolerate maybe taking 1 week off rather than 2 weeks of the progesterone. And that all said, we also have so many women that take their progesterone every single day because they want to. They feel good. They don't want to mess with it. People like Dr. David Rosensweet, the menopause method, which I've also taken his course as well, doesn't feel the need to cycle progesterone. Many doctors feel that way, where they've seen that their patients are getting really good responses. They're feeling well on their hormones, and so they're like, why would we bother? Let's just static dose women and not cycle progesterone. So I really try to stay open-minded. I definitely have preferences because I feel that on the receptor level, it is better to cycle our progesterone. So I can't tell you like, oh, this is what you should do or not do. It's going to be a personal preference. Uh, but when we look at things long term, we get better receptor health. Less women saying that, oh, my progesterone suddenly doesn't work anymore. I'm not getting the same effects from my HRT that I used to when I first started. And we believe that that could be because they are using progesterone every day, or maybe they're using really high levels of progesterone and not enough estrogen, and they're doing it daily. And it does start to affect how that person is feeling that HRT. So I would say give it a try. Like, you're obviously, doing your homework on all of this. And I think it's awesome that you're considering, cycling the progesterone, and you like what you've heard from Dr. Gersh, who's brilliant with hormones, and she's worked with thousands and thousands of women as well, as have we in our clinic. And we definitely see that it does work really well, and women do feel good on cyclical progesterone. But just know that there is different levels to cycling hormones. That's kind of the first entry level, I would say, where it's 2 on, 2 off. You're cycling progesterone and you're taking a static dose of estrogen every single day. Then there's the next level up, which is the Gersh's, I'll call it the Gersh method, even though that's not what she calls it, but where we are doing peaks and troughs of the hormones, both estradiol and progesterone, throughout the month. So we are altering the levels in other places, not just 2 on, 2 off. And then the third level would be physiologic restoration, also known as the Wiley protocol. And so when someone's doing that, it's different. You're changing the levels of hormones I think it's every 4 days. And they're really trying to mimic what happens in our cycle as younger women, where it's going up and down and, in quite high doses where we're replacing these hormones to what they would have been in our younger years, like 25-ish years. So much higher doses, much more cycling, and closer to what we would naturally do as a younger woman. And I tell you what, everybody's different. I have seen some women that absolutely have to do the Wiley protocol to feel their best and to get the most out of HRT, where they're like, yes, this is it. And then I've seen women, nope, they can't handle the swings. They don't want a period. They're like, forget about it. And they want to take static dosing, estrogen, and progesterone every single day. And in smaller amounts, and that's where they feel their best. So, it's really to each his own. But if we're trying to be like Mother Nature as close as we can ish, then we're going to lean on the side of trying to cycle the hormones to some extent, even if it's just the progesterone, 2 on, 2 off. Okay, Josephine. So Josephine left me a great review. Thank you so much, Josephine. She says, I always enjoy Karen's podcast as she comes across as a real person who has gained vast experience in all women's hormones topics. I like how she interviews her guests, and I feel like I can relate to her. Thanks, Karen. Well, thank you very much for leaving that review. And if anybody on the Speak Pipe or anybody that's listening would like to leave a review, I sure appreciate it. And it does really help the podcast to grow. I know you guys hear this from every podcaster. The bag of please just leave me a review. We get, we have 1.5 million downloads, and it's like, oh, there's 25 reviews. It's like, oh, come on, people. But I get it. These days, people are like, yeah, whatever. They ignore us. The podcast pleads, please leave me a review. Okay, so Josephine, she says, I am menopausal and on an estradiol patch. I still use bioidentical estradiol cream on my labia a few times a week, and I take bioidentical oral micronized progesterone. I was taking the progesterone 100 milligrams 5 days a week and 2 days off. Recently, I've decided to try physiological dosing. So I'm doing no progesterone for days 1 to 14 of the month, and then I will start progesterone days 15 to 30 of the month. I noticed when I went off the oral progesterone 10 days ago, I started to feel massive muscle aches and my skin was sensitive to touch. Made me think it was an estrogen dominant type state, as I have felt this before. My question is, should I take a small dose of progesterone during the first half of the month, or do I literally just do estrogen and then keep the 100 milligram daily for the second half of the month? Thank you for any thoughts you have on this. So once again, question on the dosing. And I'm going to clarify one more time that this is not considered physiological dosing. The 2 on, 2 off, it's just you're cycling your progesterone. Physiological dosing is when we're getting the amount of your hormones up to physiological doses, which is similar to what we would see in a younger woman. Okay, just to get clear on this. The 5 days on, 2 days off, I hear that actually pretty often too, where somebody has been told by their physician, take it for 5 days and then come off of it for 2 days. That typically doesn't do anything. It's not anything like we would naturally do as cyclical women. I will only ever use that if a woman is just like, I can't live without my progesterone. And yet I still know that I should take some sort of a break from it. Then maybe I'll do the 5 on 2 days off, but very, very rarely. Uh, because naturally it just would be better if you could try and get at least 2 weeks on, maybe 3 weeks on if you really need to, and then take that 1 to 2 weeks off if you can. So the muscle aches and skin sensitivity is unusual. And I can't say that I've heard that, but I think you're right in thinking that it's probably just kind of more of an estrogen dominant type reaction to that, where you withdrew your progesterone, you still have estrogen in the mix, and you're getting kind of the full effects of that. And so, one, it takes your body about 3 months to adjust to the adjustment. And so I do recommend that you give it a little time and see how it feels the next month when you withdraw your progesterone. Because what you may find is that you don't have that feeling like you did when you first withdrew it. So 3 months to give your body some time to adjust. And then if you feel like I need that little bit of progesterone because of these side effects, I would recommend that you do as small as dose as possible, because if you're wanting to if you're really wanting to do that cyclical progesterone and see what it does for you, then I would shrink it down to maybe using a little bit of just progesterone cream on the first half of the cycle, just a baby dose, enough to maybe get rid of some of those symptoms that you're talking about. And because our bodies will still make very small, very, very small amounts of progesterone in the first half of the cycle through the adrenals, spinal cord, brain. We have different areas that will make progesterone. But ovarian production, the bulk of that progesterone, it's produced halfway through the month. So if you need that baby dose of progesterone in the first half to help, okay, maybe just use that little, like I said, a little tiny bit of cream each day and see how that felt. Also, second half, when you are like, oh, I've been taking 100 milligrams. So 100 milligrams of oral progesterone is equivalent to about 20 milligrams of progesterone once it gets through your system. So when we swallow it, it's got to go through the first hepatic pass of the liver, and it's got to go through the digestive system. And so we're left with a lot of progesterone metabolites, but not very much progesterone. And so a lot of women find when they're cycling that progesterone, using a higher dose when the progesterone is supposed to be higher than 20 milligrams, that increasing from 100 can sometimes be enough to give their body balance to the first half of the cycle when there isn't progesterone. So you kind of have this better dose, more physiological dose of progesterone on that days 14 to 28, and then no progesterone or very, very tiny baby dose in the other half. So that would be more physiological dosing levels. And so you could try that to see if maybe if we just raised up that progesterone in the second half of the cycle, if that would help with these feelings of withdrawal from that progesterone when you go without it. And so I think I would recommend maybe trying that first before trying to take it every day, but just in a smaller amount. That would be more equivalent to what we do naturally, and see how that felt. Okay, so now we have a question from Kat.
Hello. Thank you, Karen, for this opportunity. I really enjoy your podcast and all the information that you put out there. It's really, really helpful. My question is if you know any information currently being treated for tick-borne infections, Lyme, Bartonella, and spotted fever that kind of, I believe, have been chronic and hidden for a few years now, and due to stressful events in my life, kind of reared their ugly heads. And simultaneously, I feel I've had a serious decline in my hormones. I am 42, definitely probably in perimenopause, probably have been for a few years now. So my question really is, can these infections affect the production of hormones and the effectiveness of HRT while treating them with antibiotics alongside probiotics and estradiol, along with other supplements? So yeah, I just kind of, been on HRT for 3 months, have definitely improved, but not 100%. So just didn't know what your knowledge was in regards to, while you're treating these kinds of infections, what to expect with the effectiveness of HRT, and how that can be.
All right. Great question. So yeah, Lyme is a tricky one, and I feel bad that you're having to deal with this. It's not a fun thing to deal with. It's very chronic, and you're right. Like stressful events and everything will kind of make it rear its ugly head, like you said. And there is effect to the hormonal system with any chronic illness in the body, because you have to always remember and go back to our bodies as women are built for procreation. That is it. Number one, to keep the species alive, grow babies. And so we have all these backup mechanisms in the system to that tell our body like, oh, hey, we're not 100% here. There's an infection going on. We're sick. We're tired. There's stressors. So your body goes, this is keeps going. And so now's not the time to be getting pregnant. This person's not doing very well. And so they couldn't carry a baby and couldn't feed this child, and, they could have a chance of dying, kind of thing, if they were pregnant and have a child and what have you. So it will downregulate the production of our fertility hormones so that we don't get pregnant. And then, of course, that affects us negatively. And then nowadays, it's like, well, I'm not trying to get pregnant, so you don't have to do that. But your body doesn't know this, right? And so it can absolutely affect it. Does it have this like direct correlation where they see somebody with Lyme disease and then boom, the hormones come down? No, it is through different mechanisms in the body. One, of course, being cortisol, right? So when we see somebody that's in adrenal insufficiency, for instance, for long periods of time, it typically can indicate there is a chronic infection going on in the body. And your body will go high with cortisol in the beginning, and then it'll downregulate the cortisol, and you kind of go in this like adrenal insufficiency, cortisol insufficiency state to preserve the system. With that will come down thyroid. So they work like a little teeter-totter with each other. Not even a teeter-totter, just bidirectional, more like, not a teeter-totter, bidirectional. So, cortisol comes down, and then that makes metabolized cortisol go down. Thyroid starts to be compromised because your body's like, we got to preserve metabolism, we got to preserve energy because we got to heal. The body's sick. We got to do something here. We got to, take stock of our stores, and everything's got to be lowered so that we can heal. And so thyroid metabolism come down, cortisol comes down, and they feed each other those hormones. And so now we're in that like fatigued state. T3 is necessary to make progesterone. It actually helps to stimulate the production of progesterone in our in certain cells in our body. It will help to basically kind of give them that jump start to making progesterone. So now we see progesterone coming down. There's different mechanisms that start to play on each other. Estrogen and thyroid have a relationship with each other. There's some things with testosterone and thyroid and Hashimoto's. They're seeing that like testosterone can come down, Hashimoto's immune system can be affected, and Hashimoto's can go up. So there's different roundabout ways that will, when there's chronic infection, that will downregulate hormone production and fertility. So yes, the answer is yes. This Lyme disease can absolutely affect your sex hormones. Not only that, when there's inflammation, you are going to have issues with the receptors. Or you're going to have problems converting T4, the inactive thyroid hormone, to T3. It'll start to go into reverse T3, which is why your metabolism will start to slow down. Whenever we see a high reverse T3 for a long period of time, that's typically where I'll go. I'll look for mold, Lyme, parasites, gut infections, any sort of chronic infection, because we see reverse T3 go up. And they've actually done studies where they've seen somebody with a chronic infection. They test their reverse T3 and their free T3 and free T4. Reverse T3 goes really high, which is like, that's not what we want. We want it to be low. So reverse T3 goes up, and they test this in these ill patients. They give the patient, in this one study, they gave the patient antibiotics to clear out the infection. I can't remember what the infection was. And literally within days, the reverse T3 went back to normal and the free T3 went back to normal. So it's very quick to affect these hormones when there's infection. And then, like I said, then that's going to affect your sex hormones, because your body's like, no thyroid, no fertility. So inflammation, thyroid, cortisol, all of that is going to affect things. You definitely want to be watching your levels of hormones, which just sounds like you are, which is awesome, because we need estradiol in proper amounts to help with our immune system and to bring down inflammation in the body. So we know that it helps to fight disease. They saw this with the coronavirus, where they saw that estrogen was the reason, one of the reasons why women weren't getting as sick as men were, was because of estrogen, estradiol specifically, and its effect on the good effects on our immune system. So making sure that you have these hormones, I think, yeah, and watch your thyroid. I would be, Kat, I would, if you haven't already, watch your thyroid markers and test your reverse T3 and see where they are. Okay. Okay. Next, we have a question from a Karen. Great name. People never say Karen's a good name, so I'll say it's a good name. Okay, so she's worried about menopausal bleeding on HRT. Gone from once a week 0.05 estradiol patch and 100 milligrams oral progesterone to 200 milligrams to 300 milligrams of the oral progesterone. Then doubled the patch to twice a week and split the oral progesterone, 200 in the PM, 100 in the AM. Now taking the 200 PM and 100 AM progesterone rectally. When I started rectal delivery, bleeding stopped totally for 3 weeks. I've now been bleeding for 2 weeks. This has gone on through all the dose changes for over a year of breakthrough bleeding. First provider was not concerned. She did 2 ultrasounds and a biopsy, and all was fine. Went to an NP, and she isn't concerned. Thinks it's the HRT. New gyno wants to do a D&C and a hysteroscopy. Those procedures seem so invasive, but I'm getting concerned that I've let this go on too long. If I wean off and stop HRT for a while and the bleeding stops, then no invasive procedures, and we know it is a dosing issue, correct? That seems like the simplest plan. If bleeding doesn't stop off of the HRT, then DC is warranted. Is my thinking correct here? Have you had odd cases like this? Thanks so much for all you do to educate women. I am postmenopausal and would love the bone, heart, and brain benefits, but my body is telling me otherwise. Okay, so from what I've gotten here, a few things. When you were doing your patch once a week, that is going to be creating an unstable uterine environment because you would have had like 2 or 3 days of estrogen and then no estrogen for the rest of the week, and then estrogen and then no estrogen. And then you went to twice a week. So that makes me happy that you did twice a week, because that is what there is a once a week patch, but I'm guessing that you're on the twice a week patch. So if that's the case, best to follow directions and take it twice a week. And then the progesterone. So one of two things could have happened there. One, the oral progesterone wasn't absorbing. So some of us have digestive issues, microbiome issues, where we aren't breaking those capsules down very well. And then, so maybe you were just getting a little bit of progesterone or something like that. And so it wasn't working well enough to counterbalance the growth of the uterine lining. Could be, not sure. And then you started to use them rectally, which I'm guessing you're still just talking about the little balls, the prometrium balls of oral progesterone. You are now putting them rectally. And I know women that will do this, they'll put them in the vagina or rectally. These are not made for the rectum and they're not made for the vagina. It's not to say you can't try them there. I think for some it can work. And, it sounds like maybe it did help for a little bit that because you did stop bleeding for 3 weeks. But maybe you weren't getting any progesterone when you did it rectally, and that stopped the bleeding for a bit. That could be something too. And maybe the oral, when you were taking it orally, you were only just getting a little bit, but that little bit was causing some instability in the uterine lining. I don't know. Just throwing some stuff out there. So, but just to say that when any of you think, oh, I'm going to try this rectally or in the vagina, know that it likely won't dissolve very well. Like there's a reason why suppositories, either whole, to be blunt, needs to be in a glycerin form. It needs to be in a form that is going to dissolve very easily in the warmth of those two areas. The balls are in quite a hard little capsule. Like if you feel them, like it's very hard to even squish them. And so it would take quite a bit. And if you pop one in there before bed and then you have a bowel movement in the morning, there's a good chance it never dissolved. Maybe, and I'm sure it could, because I've had some people be successful with this, but I would much prefer if people would just simply get the proper delivery form if they're wanting to go that route, either route. Okay. I would also recommend that you do something differently, because the oral isn't working, rectally isn't working. And because you're having problems with breakthrough bleeding, I would actually recommend doing a proper progesterone vaginal suppository. And this is not medical advice, so you need to talk to your medical provider about it. But what we've seen in our practice is women that have a lot of breakthrough bleeding, they're not absorbing that very well. So we see that when they've used higher doses of vaginal suppositories, which you have to think, if it's a 100 milligram vaginal suppository, you're getting 100 milligrams right into the uterus there. Rather rectally, it's going to be absorbed into the system, and then it'll get to the uterus, and it's nice and close to the uterus there. Orally, you're passing it through the liver, you're going through the digestive system. And like I said, if you don't have great digestive system, you may not have been getting very much. And so that may not be your best delivery form of progesterone. You're just not getting enough. What you could experiment with is, stopping the estrogen completely, just using progesterone, and see what happens. I wouldn't do the opposite. We don't want to do that. But the other thing is, and I know I'm giving too many answers here, but it's complicated. Progesterone, when given daily, can cause an unstable uterine lining and can cause breakthrough bleeding. And so it might be that you actually were taking too much progesterone, not enough estrogen, and that you were taking progesterone every day. That was a problem. So you could try doing cyclical progesterone. Like, what happens when you stop progesterone for 2 weeks and you're just on estrogen? Does the bleeding continue? Does it worsen? Because that would tell you, is it maybe being estrogen driven or not? And then the progesterone, if you did it a suppository and got it right in there, and that stopped the bleeding, then that would tell you that it's a issue of absorbing your progesterone and that you needed to give it to yourself in a different way than what you were doing. So there's a few different things there that I would try. Abstaining completely from HRT would likely stop it no matter what. So even if there was an underlying issue, the hormones could be exacerbating that and showing up as breakthrough bleeding. So if there's growth, and I know that you've had the ultrasound and everything, but if there's something going on down there and these hormones were feeding that, which can happen, right? Like, you may have had, if there was fibroids that they didn't see or catch, there's different things, or just maybe the uterine lining is unstable and getting a little bit too thick for you. And so it's just causing this constant sloughing off. Abstaining from it's just going to make it, then it could just be disappearing, but that doesn't give you the answer as to really what was happening with the uterine line. Like, if there was a problem, I'm saying if there was a problem there, it may not catch it because you don't have the hormones feeding it anymore. Does that make sense? So I like the idea of a DNC and possibly a hysteroscopy, just to rule anything out that is concerning. I'm guessing you've had I can't remember if there was a pap test or just an ultrasound. Yeah, you had a biopsy and it was all fine. Okay, good. And you had 2 ultrasounds, and I'm guessing those were pelvic ultrasounds. Like, did they actually put the ultrasound wand inside the vagina, which I hope they did, because that's going to give them a better idea of what the uterus, what's happening in there, if there's any growths, etc. So if that wasn't done, I would recommend that. So whether or not you should do a DNC hysteroscopy, really, that's up to you. But I can say for sure that doesn't, just abstaining from the HRT isn't necessarily going to give you your answer. Is it the hormones or is it not the hormones? And I've given you some ideas of how you can kind of, play around with dosage to see if it is just a matter of absorption that's the problem or levels that's the problem. It's always that very interesting thing. And like, I've personally found, for instance, like, I go through months where I'll get a ton of breakthrough bleeding and then I don't get a period for months on end. And I can like manipulate the dosages and go up, down, and it just doesn't seem to matter. It's just part of the perimenopause journey. And we see this with clients as well, where it's like we'll do all we can to adjust and to make that go away. But sometimes it's just a matter of getting to the finish line and going kind of crossing over into that menopausal phase. But anyways, I hope that that helps and gives you some idea of what you could be doing. But I would definitely, go right at it rather than going rectally or orally. Hit it up right in that in your uterus and see if maybe that higher dose could be an option. Like I said, talk to your doctor about it. But we have seen that work really well for women that break through bleed a lot, is to do a higher dosed vaginal suppository and cycle that progesterone so that we're not causing an unstable uterine lining.
Hi, my question is how to do HRT for people who have adenomyosis or fibroids or even polyps or ovarian cysts. I have maybe adenomyosis and I have been doing HRT and I feel great increasing estrogen, but then my uterus increased the adenomyosis as well. So how to do this balance with the uterus, even though I'm also on progesterone, but just more, I guess, information on increasing estrogen and managing estrogen for people who have issues in the uterus that react strongly to more estrogen. Besides, I guess also intravaginal creams, maybe intravaginal progesterone creams and all this kind of stuff, how it could work together. And yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Kathy. So very similar to even the woman before, kind of some of the same advice that she can apply to herself as well, which is when you are in that kind of sensitivity to estrogen and you tend to have these growths that are typically driven by estrogen, fibroids, there's an estrogen connection, ovarian cysts, adenomyosis, there's a connection, and it's all about like this estrogen to progesterone ratio thing, where we have too much estrogen in comparison to our progesterone. And so you want to make sure that you're on enough progesterone. Number one, consider progesterone suppositories, proper progesterone suppositories. Made for the vagina, typically higher dosage. That we've seen that work really well for shrinking fibroids, for helping with endometriosis. And so with adenomyosis, that could also help. Adenomyosis and endometriosis, very similar in nature, very autoimmune in nature, both of them. They both have activation of our immune system. So we see that our immune system goes like, oh, we got something going on here. It activates it. And so there's inflammation, there's immune system involved, typically gut stuff involved because we're not breaking our estrogen down properly. Doing a Dutch test would be great if that's something that you could afford to do, because then you could see, are you pushing down some improper pathways? Are you methylating properly? How's that phase one metabolism? So you could see kind of where your hangups are. Genetic testing can also tell us a lot about maybe things that your body is naturally deficient in because of the genetics or have problems with, so that you would know what to supplement with to support these pathways that genetically you don't do well with. And so both those tests can tell us a lot when it comes to these things. But treating it like like an inflammatory immune system, not metabolizing my estrogen very well, kind of that's the puzzle, right? Or all of those pieces that you have to be paying attention to. And so making sure that you're supporting your estrogen detox pathways, phase one, phase two, phase three. How's your gut system? How's your inflammation? Things like low dose naltrexone are used with anybody with chronic inflammation and inflammatory issues. That's through prescription. Things like calcium D-glucarate can be used to help your body to metabolize estrogen out. It will lower estrogen levels, so you do have to kind of monitor your estrogen levels as you're taking calcium D-glucarate. It's not as strong as D-indole in lowering estrogen, and it's it's in a different pathway. It's glucuronidation, so it's a different pathway, but we do see it working well for women with fibroids. Vitamin D, so check your vitamin D levels. Do you need to be using vitamin D supplementation? Of course, that's really supportive of the immune system, but there's a connection between fibroids, and I know you don't have fibroids, but growth in the uterus. There is a connection between vitamin D deficiencies and fibroids in the body. So vitamin D also just so important for people with immune dysregulation, with inflammation, things like that. And we tend to be very vitamin D deficient, and it's just so important for us. So checking your vitamin D status is really important. And then supplementing if need be. Maybe consider the new vitamin D light box. That could be, you could be a good fit for that. Anti-inflammatory diet. So, so paleo-based diet would be great because you want to lower overall inflammation. And the best way to do that is through diet usually. And then making sure you've got like, methylated vitamin Bs for a lot of people that helps them metabolize and methylate their estrogen. And acetylcysteine is a really good supplement to help us metabolize estrogen. Like I said, the calcium D, resveratrol. A new one, here's a new one that I just learning about is the urolithin A is amazing for it. It's a really good phytoestrogen that was shown to have, oh my God, I don't want to mess this up. I just reviewed a paper on it on my Instagram, so you could still find it on there, where they saw that urolithin A and how it acted on the estrogen receptors and how it was helpful for suppressing tumor. Oh, I don't want to mess this up. Just go look it up on my Instagram. You'll see it. But Timeline Nutrition is I take, and it's so good for so many different things. It's amazing for the immune system, amazing for muscle growth, amazing for mitochondrial health, and it acts as an incredible phytoestrogen that helps. It doesn't have, this is what it was. There was no proliferation from it. So it act on these receptors, but it didn't make things proliferate because estrogen can do that. And so it acts as this amazing phytoestrogen, but without causing any proliferation. So something like that could be really great. I'll let me link to that one too in the show notes. So yeah, I would kind of, and then the high dosed suppositories, we've also seen work really well in our practice for that type of thing. So there's some things that you can try out and talk to your doctor about. Okay, now Natalie. This was a great question. Natalie says, do you have or know of any documentation to forward to employer benefit companies to assist in requesting HRT coverage? She is in Canada, possibly including stats in regards to sick or disability impacts financially, which I did at the very beginning of today's episode, which is $25 billion a year. It's costing America, and it's costing Canada a lot of money as well. It's not as bad as the United States, but it's definitely up there. I've looked at it before, and it was terrible. And it's also in the workplace, it's costing us oh my gosh, what was it? Like there was not 25. I have it here somewhere. Menopause costs American women an estimated 1.8 billion in lost working time per year, according to a Mayo Clinic study published in 2023. Can you believe that? Isn't that just like insane? So Canada's not far off. So it's costing us work time. It is, and when I hear a stat like that, we're not talking hot flashes. Like women aren't staying at home or quitting their jobs because they have some vaginal dryness and some hot flashes and weight gain. Like this is serious problems where it makes a woman unable to go to work and for many to even keep their job. So this you could bring up to your employer. But what I was going to tell you is in Canada, as a nurse, I know in BC, for instance, you guys have Blue Cross as your coverage. Most extended medical companies, if not all, will cover pharmaceutical made HRT. So that would be estrogen patch and prometrium and estrogel. So I would phone your extended medical company and ask if those are covered. Compounded will not be covered in most cases. So please check that. I've worked with a lot of nurses in Canada, and all of them had those ones covered. So those were made by a pharmaceutical company. They're still bioidentical, so safe to use. So patches, prometrium, estrogel, the estro string, which is a vaginal ring that you put in for vaginal dryness, should be, at least a percentage of them should be covered. And then she was saying like, yeah, she found that the synthetic ones were covered, but not the compounded. But yeah, the compounded ones definitely are rarely covered with our extended medical. So that's what I would try first. And then if they really aren't, if none of them are covered, yeah, I tell them to listen to my podcast. How about that? But yeah, that's quite a bit to chew off one person. But you could certainly be like, if you wanted to go there, you could make a stance of just how ill women can get and how much it affects their productivity at work. But when they go through perimenopause and menopause, and there are stats, if you look up Menopause Canada, I think you can look up the stats that are in Canada, because I have before, and I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but they're astonishing, just like they are in the United States. Okay.
Hi, my name's Kathy, and I'm 57, and I thank you, Karen, for all you do for women's health and hormone information. A lot of good stuff has helped me that you've said. My question is, I'm on hormones, cream, estradiol, and testosterone, and I take progesterone. And I've been doing it daily, but I'm wanting to maybe cycle, and I just don't really understand how I can do that. I kind of want to just try it on my own right now. I can play around with the amount of cream I use. I did try it last month for the first time, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and obviously didn't have a bleed, just guessing because I wouldn't have anything built up since I've been doing it continuous. But I'm getting ready to do it again this month and stop the progesterone for 2 weeks. If I don't have a bleed, does that mean I need more
So once again, it cut her off. And what she was going to ask was, do I need more estrogen? Not every woman will have a breakthrough bleed when they cycle progesterone. Even when their levels are higher. It's interesting. We definitely will have many women that don't bleed still. But typically, yes, if your estradiol gets up to the physiological levels, then there will be growth of the uterine lining and the progesterone. When we withdraw the progesterone, it will cause the uterine bleed. So it could be that, yeah, you just needed a little bit more estradiol. But once again, you can always do 3 months to really give your body a chance to adapt to your new regime, your new hormone regime, because it can take 3 months to adjust. Then you can also test, of course, your levels of estradiol on day 21 of your cycle, see where they're at. We definitely see that, getting up to therapeutic levels, which is typically around 65 picograms per milliliter and above, even between 65 and 100, we see then a little bit of a bleed happening. So you could test your levels, see where they're at. That's definitely something, or you can kind of wait it out if you want for 3 months and see if things change. But if your levels come back that they are in that nice therapeutic level, then, and you're not bleeding, that's okay too. You obviously will want to monitor your uterine lining, make sure that that everything's healthy and good and there's nothing overgrowing and just not shedding. And, cover all grounds, of course, always safety first. But yes, to answer the question is yes, it could mean that your estradiol isn't high enough. So you could definitely play around with the amounts. Okay. Emily, hormones, perimenopause, and the lymphatic system. It seems my lymphatic system has been overwhelmed more lately. Definitely know I've had Lyme exposures. It's always so interesting that the questions that come in when I do Q&As, it's like there's themes. And it's crazy like how many of the very similar questions I'll get sent in. It's always does this. It's so funny. So today's theme, we've got Lyme and cyclical progesterone. Those are the themes for today. Anyways, so she's had Lyme exposure as well as mold, but recently the lymphatic congestion has increased and wondered if my perimenopause state could be adding to it. Lots of water retention and puffiness, as well as heat intolerance. Thanks for your thoughts. So perimenopause, definitely we can start carrying more water, a couple different reasons, but typically it's because progesterone will start to drop and estrogen won't right away. And so we are in this estrogen dominant phase, and the right amount of progesterone, it can act like a diuretic. And so it helps us to keep that water off. And so if your progesterone is lowering, which is of course very typical in perimenopause, it'll drop about 75% when we're in our early 40s. If that's the case and you're not supplementing with progesterone, then we can start to get puffy. The heat intolerance, though, tends to be more of a deficiency of estradiol. And estradiol, as I said before, super important for our immune system. So if your estradiol is getting low and the progesterone is getting low, you could be having more immune issues and inflammation because we start to get more inflamed as we lose estradiol. This could be causing water retention, the puffiness, the heat intolerance, the lymphatic things that are happening, maybe the rearing of the Lyme the Lyme disease, mold, things like that, right? So, because your system's stressed out. So, what I would love for you to do is test, test, test. Where's your estradiol at? Where's your FSH at? Your progesterone, your lymphocytes, because that tells you, that gives you a kind of a status of what's happening in your lymphatic system are your lymphocytes. So, doing a CBC panel with differentials, super important. Look at your lymphocyte numbers. Check your thyroid. Thyropause is a thing. It's a real thing. I just did a whole podcast about this. And I think every woman needs to listen to it because everybody's like, oh, I don't have a thyroid problem, never had, and then suddenly they're having all of these symptoms in perimenopause, gaining weight, getting puffy, foggy brain, and it can actually be their thyroid going down. It's very, very common for thyroid to come down and you to slow down and to develop hypothyroidism. So check your thyroid. It has a lot to do with your immune system as well. We want to see if your estrogen's fine, but maybe your progesterone isn't. And then obviously replace if that's what you're interested in doing. But get on top of it because that your body is telling you something's shifted. Things are not working the way they were before. Obviously, I'm sure you know all of the lymphatic drainage stuff. You want to do the air brushing, you can do the trampoline, you can do lymphatic massage, things like this. Something like red light therapy, infrared sauna can really help with things like this, with the mold and the Lyme exposure. It's right, it's detoxification. Getting this out of your body, super important in a gentle, safe way, could be really key for you. Things like methylene blue, my favorite. Methylene blue, so good for the immune system, helps to kill a virus, has been shown to help with Lyme disease. Really great for mitochondria. So you could think about something like that. But I would definitely be testing the hormone levels and be testing lymphocytes, things like that, and then kind of put together a plan for yourself. Hopefully, working with a practitioner. Okay.
Hi, Karen. My name is Renee Savage, and I'll be 50 next year. And I started using your product, and I love it. My hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings. Oh my God, the list can go on and on. I have gained about 12 pounds. I had a big move as well. Um, and at the same time, my hormones were dropping tremendously. Um, but thankfully, as I came across your bioidentical creams, I've been using the Vitality and the Progesterone, and I've been cycling the Progesterone. I did have a bleed once, but the very first night I used Progesterone, I slept like a baby. I love your product. My question for you is, when are you going to get it back on the market? I really need to buy more, and I don't want to be without it. I'm thankful for you and all your work that you do, teaching women about hormones. I love it. I was in a holistic acupuncture doctor assistant for 15 years in Huntsville, Alabama. And my acupuncture experience as also in Western medicine for as an MA for we got cut off, Karen. It's Renee Savage again. I just wanted to end with thanking you for all that you do for us women and teaching us. And I would love to be able to afford to do more for you or order more or have you as a coach or whatever. Maybe in the future that can happen. So I'm going to keep you in mind, but please respond and let me know whenever you're going to get your product back online so I can buy more. Thanks, Karen, and have a good day. All right, bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much for your kind words, Renee. It's very sweet. And I love that my creams have helped you so much to feel better. That just you don't even know how much joy that brings me. It's why I do what I do, is to hear things like that where it's like, oh, I've changed somebody's life. Like they feel better, they're living a better life thanks to those products. So that's just like and for the podcast and everything that I do. So I really, really appreciate hearing that, Renee. If you wanted to leave me a written testimonial, you can email that to me, Karen@KarenMartell.com, about the creams, and I will send you a really good coupon code in exchange so that your next order you can get 20% off of it. So um, if you're interested, because I do like to collect these testimonials, it makes me very happy, and then I can share them with others. As for product in stock, you can order your progesterone and the estradiol vitality. It is back in as of today, the recording of today's podcast. And we have had terrible delays. One, it amazes me how many of you love these creams as much as you do. And because you're showing just like how much you just want them back in stock. And it's not like just a supplement going out of stock, where you're like, oh, yeah, that's fine. I won't take it for a while. Women are like, oh, I can't live without these hormones now. Like, give them to me. What's going on? So that makes me feel absolutely horrible that they have been out of stock. Um, this is all new for me too, everyone. I just started selling these creams in the beginning of this year, and I have done no advertising for them. And I've just kind of put them out there, see how they're going to go. And it's been overwhelmingly positive. And it like so much so that I haven't been able to keep up with it, obviously, where every time I've ordered more, I've, increased the volume of how much I'm ordering. I'm ordering way more in advance because they're literally flying off the shelves. uh, and I'm trying to stay on top of it. And it's like, oh, no, now they're selling even faster. And now they're selling like more and more and more. So I am doing my best. And then which has been the real problem, is actually isn't my fault, because I have done a good job of pre-ordering well in advance, like 2 months in advance. And the issue has been with other companies. So my manufacturer of the creams and our certificate of analysis team. So in order to be an get FDA approval of our creams in our manufacturing site, we have to have a certificate of analysis. So they're taking the creams, they're testing them, they're making sure there's nothing wrong with them, they're clean, which is really important to me because I want to give you guys a product that you can trust in. And so I have to have this certificate of analysis. It is that company, which is outside of the manufacturers, outside of the shipping, outside of Karen Martell, that is the holdup. And we've had it twice now where they have taken weeks longer than what they should have. And so even though I'm well in advance in ordering these creams, these people are holding it up. And so the creams have been ready to go for weeks. We expected them 3 weeks ago, which is, I told everybody, I'm like, yep, they'll be in next week, because that's what I was told. And then they're like, oh, we still don't have certificate of analysis. Oh, we still don't have. So I was finally told, oh, they're ready to go. And I was like, hey, great. So I opened up shop, and then I saw days later, my shipment still hadn't arrived. I get a hold of them. They're like, the progesterone and the estradiol are ready. And we have the certificate of analysis, but we didn't get the biased, the estro 2. Ugh. So anyways, it's coming. They said this week. I'm not making any promises though. Either way, you can go in and you can order progesterone and estradiol now. And moving forward, we're going to try now advancing it even farther, and take, several months when we do an order. So we'll do it several months in advance now. I'm just trying to avoid this happening again, because I want to give you guys good customer service and give you these creams in a timely manner and never run out, so you can always have access to them. So I apologize. Bear with me. I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate that you're purchasing these creams. I love it. I love it. I love it. It makes me so happy that people are feeling better from them and utilizing them and getting their health back. So that's amazing. I do have some exciting products in the making, which is also really just fun. And I just can't wait to share them with you guys. So I am going to be doing a progesterone oil. So it's in vitamin E and MCT oil. It'll be suspended in it. And I'm going to put melatonin in it. So it'll be safe for oral consumption, but I can't say that it's to be used that way, but it's safe for oral consumption. So you can use it transdermally, and it's safe for oral consumption. So you can get the benefits of oral plus, or you can just put it on your skin and rub it in. But the melatonin, it'll have in the research, it shows that it gives this nice slow release into the system. And so it helps people to, when you use melatonin transdermally, it actually helps you to stay asleep longer throughout the night. So when you have wake ups in the night, it can actually help you to go back to sleep. Oh, so isn't that exciting? Oh, I can't wait to have that one. So that's the next one that I'm in the process right now of formulating. And then there's other ones on the rise. I've got a vagina one coming as well. That's going to have some DHEA and some estriol in it that, once again, suspended in the MCT, that can be applied on the labia. So that's another one. But I've got a whole bunch of ideas for you guys. All right, so we've got only 2 more here. So let's listen to those ones.
Hi, Karen. My name is Renee Savage.
Oh, sorry, that was the same one.
Hey, so my question is, can I cycle my terzeptide, like 1 week on and then take 2 weeks off, 1 week on, 2 weeks off? I'm using 50 milligrams, I think, in my needle, the lowest dose. And yeah, I feel so much better when I'm on it. It's not so much for weight loss. I just feel like I don't have the shakes when I get hungry.
Mhm.
It seems to regulate my blood sugar. And if you do answer this question,
All right. So thank you for that question. You can cycle tirzepatide, especially if you're not on it for weight loss anymore, like you've lost the weight, you're coming off of it, or weaning off. A lot of women will remain on a very micro dose because of the other benefits of GLP-1s. A lot of women get the anti-inflammatory effects, blood sugar control, which is, what it was originally made for was for diabetics, type 2 diabetics. So yes, it absolutely helps with blood sugar and helps to get rid of like the blood sugar roller coaster feeling that many of us have. And they also, in a microdose, I find really help with cravings. And so you don't get the full on appetite suppression when you're doing a microdose, which is good. You want to be able to eat lots of, eat your normal calories, not gain any of the weight back, but then have the benefits of the anti-inflammatory, the immune system, the quieting of other addictions, and the quieting of like that, of like wanting something sweet is like, oh my God, that's huge. And I definitely have found that microdosing it definitely helps with that. So I hear where you're coming from, and yes, you can. Everybody's different though, as far as how unstable the weight is when you're done losing weight on GLPs. So we've seen some people that can do one shot every 3 to 4 weeks and maintain their weight and feel good. Other people, we see that they need to do a microdose once a week, or every 2 weeks or every 10 days. Uh, and that keeps their weight stable, gives them these other great benefits. And so you kind of have to just play around and see what's going to work for you. But the goal, of course, always is the least amount that you have to take to get what you're looking for. So if that's weight stability, blood sugar stability, cravings down, then that's what you're aiming for. So just keep lowering until you go, okay, this is, oh, I'm not getting those benefits anymore. Maybe I need to go to the previous dose or a little bit up from there and see how that feels. I did this with myself. I did for several months. I toyed around with different dosages where, I would take 2.5 every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. And I found my weight would start to creep up a little bit. And then I went down to 2.5 every 10 days. And then I'm like, no, that's too much because my appetite was getting suppressed too much. And so I landed at a 1 milligram to 1.2 every 7 to 10 days, I would say. And that's keeping things stable, keeps the cravings away, inflammation down, feel great. But that's me. Everybody's different. And so play around with it, find what's going to work for you. You definitely are not on 50 milligrams. You'd probably be in the hospital if that was the case. So you're saying 50 units. That could be, I mean, depending on what your vial dose was and all of that. So I have no idea. I don't know what you're taking, what you're doing, who you are. So um, if you're working with your physician, ask them, what's the milligram dose of that 50 units, or figure it out for yourself what that milligram is, and then start playing around with the dosage of cutting down. Like maybe if you were doing 50 units, you do 40 units, or whatever, and play around until you find what's going to work. But you definitely want to be able to have the least amount possible for as long as possible, in between dosages, because I don't think that it's good to have a bunch of GLP-1 in us. That's not natural, like higher doses, for really long periods of time. So if you're wanting it as like a lifestyle enhancement, anti-aging enhancement, keeping the weight down, metabolic health, smaller doses for longer stretches of time.
Hi, Karen. I live in Norway, 44 years old, and I've had breast cancer twice. I also am experiencing really bad PMS and during menstruation, like a lot of anxiety and just foggy brain, and basically, yeah, it's really bad. I can't function. It's ruining my partnerships, and yeah, can't function in work. So it's like good over a week and a half before I start to come up again. So it's very little help to get around hormones in Norway. It's can't barely get any help with women's health at all. Just birth control and antidepressants at the moment. I'm not taking that. When I had the cancer treatments, I said no to estrogen blockers. But I'm very open to or I'm wondering what you have to say about actually have had breast cancer. I know this is a sensitive topic, but I don't want to live like this for the rest of our life. I'd rather have, quality of life. And I think you can really have that if you.
Well, first of all, I am so sorry that you are suffering like this. Like, this is just proof of what I was saying earlier about how much it can affect a woman and her work. Like, that, like, you're unable to work, your relationships are being affected. Like, how could you imagine how many divorces have been caused or breakups have been caused by women, untreated perimenopausal and menopausal women, when had they had access to hormones and a good practitioner, that maybe there's a good chance that their relationships wouldn't have dissolved. It's really heartbreaking. You didn't say what type of breast cancer you had, which obviously has, a lot to do with whether or not you can or you should or shouldn't take hormone therapy, estrogen hormone therapy. Like, if it was an estrogen positive, progesterone positive breast cancer, obviously you have to be a little bit more careful. I would read Avram Blooming's book, Estrogen Matters. Uh, he's a breast cancer oncologist who's been using estrogen treatment in women post breast cancer. And what they're seeing is that there's less reoccurrence of breast cancer in women that use hormone replacement therapy. Dr. Jen Simmons, she's going to be coming on the podcast. She is a breast cancer oncologist, and we're going to be talking all about this. She's definitely a proponent of HRT. So I'll be asking her lots of these questions for you, which, what are your options if you've had breast cancer? I do know that it does come down to a personal choice. And it's like, okay, personally, you you want quality of life, and that's what's most important to you. And so because of that, a lot of women will choose to go on HRT because they want that quality of life, and they're willing to risk that. Um, Cancer is extremely complicated. There's so many different factors, but there's so much that we can do now that we know about that can help you to not get that cancer again. That doesn't have to do with hormones, right? Like, there's things, metabolic issues, where we're taking care of our nutrition and our body and the inflammation and stress and things like this that can really help not develop cancer. And so, I think that it's really important that you've got all of those aspects inside that puzzle for you of putting things together and making sure that you've covered those bases, that you're sleeping, that you're stress managing, which a lot of these things you're going to have such a hard time doing because you don't have the hormones to support. And I'm a big believer in, like, I want a woman to feel good first and foremost, so that then she can make these lifestyle changes, that sleeping then becomes easier, that stress management becomes easier, that exercising becomes easier, because you're supporting that system with those hormones. So making sure that those things are covered, I think, is really important. And then there are options. There's still a lot of options that are non-hormonal. There are hormones that, for instance, testosterone has been shown in the research that it won't aromatize to estrogen in breast tissue. So testosterone could be a good option that could help with some of the symptoms that you're experiencing. Obviously, though, you do have to talk to an oncologist about this, or somebody that knows. I'm not the cancer person. I'm not a cancer expert. I'm not a doctor. Somebody actually called me doctor in one of their voice messages. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I'm just a total hormone geek that knows more than most doctors do about hormones. But you do want to talk to somebody that understands breast cancer and is extremely knowledgeable in hormone replacement therapy. So even, Kristen, even if you talk to somebody like, if you became somebody's patient like Dr. Jen's, and just got their advice. There's also Julie Taguchi. I highly recommend Julie Taguchi. I did a great podcast with her called The Great Estrogen Debate, where we had Dr. Felice Gersh and Lindsay Berkson, Rosensweet, we all did a podcast together. Dr. Taguchi was involved in that. She's a breast cancer oncologist who uses physiologic restoration of hormones is her thing. She did the Wiley protocol. She wrote the book on it with T.S. Wiley. So she's extremely knowledgeable in hormone replacement therapy, believes in higher dosed hormone replacement therapy, and is worked in breast cancer oncology for decades. And she's got a private practice now in California, and she will do coaching calls, like where it's not a coaching call, she'll see people from anywhere in the world to advise. So she can't obviously prescribe you anything from California, but she could certainly advise you. And maybe if you could find a practitioner in Norway who would be willing to work with Julie on a treatment plan for you, that would be the route I would go. You can email me and I will give you her contact and I will make an introduction to her for you. Okay. Karen at KarenMartell.com. Throw me an email and I will just say, hey, it's Kristen. I would like to work with Julie Taguchi. I'm the one that had breast cancer in Norway. The other thing would be, I'm guessing that you've probably heard of me because I was on the Biohacker Girls podcast in Norway, which I'll be speaking at their event, I do believe, in 2026. So not for another year and a half, but you can come see me in person in Norway, which would be pretty cool. They do work with practitioners. The both of them are both on hormone replacement therapy and they're both in Norway. So I would reach out to them on Instagram or their email and ask them who their doctor is, who they're working with, because maybe that doctor who believes in HRT would be willing to work with Dr. Taguchi. There's things like estriol, vaginal estrogen that shows to be safe to be used post breast cancer. Estriol, a lot of women will use because it's not proliferative and seems to be safe for breast cancer patients. Sometimes progesterone can be safe. So there are options. There's some good phytoestrogens. I've heard really good reports about the Happy Mammoth product for menopausal women, and they do sell it in Europe. So I can link to that in my show notes. So that could be something to try because they have great reviews on how much it helps with menopausal symptoms. So doing something like that to be supportive of the body, I think would be great. Do you have access to methylene blue? That can be great for foggy brain. It can be great for mood, for mitochondrial health. Antiviral, like I said, great for the immune system, so which could be good for cancer patients, of course. So things like that. You can also try different product lines. ONA's one of them that you could try to order to Europe. That's ONAS. She might be able to. I might be able to. Throw me an email and I can check and see, and then and we'll go from there. All right, ladies, that was the last of our questions. As usual, it was a two-parter. I had to split this into two parts because I tend to talk way too much. I know. I can't just give a straight answer. I got to go into great detail, but I hope you guys appreciate it. All right, ladies, thank you for your questions. If you could leave me a review on iTunes as an exchange, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. All right, till next time.